Sliced by KB HURST. The snow was rambunctious in its terror on the streets of the little town known as Mulberry Falls. A foot had landed on Jolene's back door in the last hour. Jolene had just arrived home after staying late to volunteer to hold babies with serious illnesses such as crack addiction, HIV, or other serious diseases. It was tiring, but she didn't mind. She would talk to them, sometimes sing to them. After all, it wasn't their fault. She noticed that there was a large package on her front doorstep. It was addressed to her soon-to-be ex-husband, Darren. Jolene laughed to herself, taking off her jacket. What on earth could this be? It was from his grandmother that lived in Germany. She grabbed a knife and sliced the brown packaging tape open. As she did, she sliced her finger on something. She sucked on the cut and went to grab a paper towel to quell the blood for now. Jolene opened the rest of the package, and inside was a mass of packaging paper. She didn't care that it was probably a gift for Darren. He had been a brute over the last few years since leaving her. In her mind, this was a form of mini revenge. He had, after all, sliced open her chest, ripped out her heart. All of that, she thought, as she tore open the box with a rip here and a tear there. When Jolene finally got all of the paper out, inside revealed a wooden box. There was nothing on it. It was just a wooden box. She picked up the box and inspected it, but she couldn't find anything extraordinary about it, as it was plain and boring. The only thing that she could see on the front was some scripture about the good being rewarded and the bad being punished. It said something else about blood, but she couldn't read it. She realized that her bloody finger was now seeping through the paper towel that she had carelessly wrapped in her cut finger inside of it. Ugh, it dripped onto the box. Shit, she said, running to clean it off. Jolene grabbed another paper towel, but there was nothing to clean when she went to clean it off. Instead, there were only the words in German, Danke. She knew enough basic German from her husband's extended family to see that it just meant thank you. She had inspected the box seconds before, and she didn't see any other words on it, really. Putting it down, she thought no more of it. She placed it on her kitchen table. Her eyes went towards the roaring winter storm outside. The snow was massive as it fell, blinding her view from the front parlor window as she looked out at the street. There were few houses on her street, but the ones she could see showed no signs of life on this cold winter night. The storm was relentless, and Christmas was just around the corner. She could see Mr. and Mrs. Hill's Christmas lights blowing in the wind. For a small suburban street, it was eerily quiet. Jolene shut the curtain and went to pour herself a glass of wine and pop on one of those holiday movies. She curled up on her sofa, pulling her oversized leggings up to her knees and wrapping her large sweater around her as she held her wine. The movie was one of those corny movies where the couple hates each other until they realize how much they have in common. In the end, everyone is happy. It was Christmas after all. Jolene had forgotten what it was like to be in love. She only knew disappointment. Her husband, Darren, had left her for a secretary, as if there wasn't anything more cliché in the world. Her cell went off. Speaking of the devil. Jolene, I wanted to ask you if you could send my grandmother's package to me when it comes. Why the hell is she sending it to me? Didn't you tell her we were getting a divorce? Look, I'm sorry, don't be pissed. Too late for that. Look, did you get any mail today at all? Any boxes? I must get this box from my grandmother. It's been in our family for generations. Jolene rolled her eyes. I did, but I haven't had a chance to go through my mail. I've had several, she lied. Will you look tomorrow first thing? Now you have some nerve. Just do it. Stop being a bitch. You sure know how to charm my pants off, Jolene said sarcastically. I never stood a chance. They're always too tight. Goodbye, Darren, Jolene said, hanging up on him. She immediately received a text from him. I deserve that, but seriously, I promise. Promise me that you will check tomorrow. It's very important that it doesn't get in the wrong hands. Jolene only texted him, "'Kay," and turned off her phone. Jolene had grown tired and decided to turn in for the night. She had the next day off from work so she could curl up in her bed and sleep in once in a very long while. Her shifts at the hospital had slowed a bit lately, so she was able to take a long-awaited break. Just as she was about to turn in, the power in her small house went out. She shuffled towards the front window and could see that the lights on the entire street were out. Must have been the storm. Thank God for having a fireplace in her bedroom. She knew if the power was out, there was a good chance that it would be most of the night. Jolene went to the kitchen utility drawer and pulled out a pack of matches and a flashlight. She would use the matches for her fireplace and the flashlight to light the way to her bedroom. As she closed the drawer, she heard something hit the side of her house. It was a heavy thud, and she wondered what on earth it could be. Jolene hoped to God that it wasn't a tree down. She put on her boots, a jacket, and went out to investigate. She could barely see in front of her from the blizzard and the wind and the tiny icicles as they whipped against her skin. Jolene held her breath, trying to find a way to breathe. She hid her eyes from the strong wind and the snow as she walked slowly towards the side of her house. There was no tree down. Thank heaven for that. She did see something that caught her off guard. There were 2 footprints in the snow. They were so large that even in the blizzard, she could see them because they created a sinking in the snow that caused her to lose her footing. What in the world? She asked herself. She had no idea what could have made those footprints, but she wasn't taking any chances. She would haul up inside her warm house and investigate further in the morning. She just hoped that whatever it was, the storm would keep it away. Jolene hurried towards the front of her house, and it's then that she noticed the front door was wide open. She looked around and guessed she had not shut it all the way. The stupid wind must have blown it open, she thought. There was snow all over the front of her foray now. She stepped in, shutting the door with a loud slam. Jolene secured the lock for good measure, and then grabbed her matches and headed towards her bedroom. Jolene lit the matches and attempted to light the wood that she had packed in her fireplace for just this occasion. She could feel the chill in the air already from the electric heat not working from the power outage. She took off her sweater and went to lie in her bed. She undid her freshly made covers and crawled inside. She closed her eyes and waited for sleep. All of a sudden, there was a loud noise coming from the bedroom next door. Jolene sat up, not sure what could have made such a sound. Then she heard it again. Jolene got out of bed and crept close to the wall. It was a screeching sound that sounded like nails running along the wall just 6 inches away from where she stood to listen. Then she heard something snort, as though it were sniffing her from the other side of the wall. It was intense and kept on for a long while. Jolene pulled back, startled by it. She ran to shut and lock her bedroom door quickly and began to breathe heavily, unsure what it could be. Could a dog have gotten inside her house? Then she heard heavy footsteps and more loud, intense sniffing on the other side of her bedroom door. The footsteps stopped as if they were satisfied by something. Jolene couldn't hear anything except the sound of her breath. After some moments, she crept towards the door and unlocked it to peek out. There was nothing there. Where did it go off to so suddenly? She pondered this dilemma as she worried about where it had gone. Jolene went into the hallway, slowly looking around. On the ground, in front of her, was Darren's box. She had no clue how it had appeared there. Someone or something had moved it. Jolene suddenly had chills up her spine as she slowly picked it up. The box had changed again, And now there were more words engraved.
Ein Geschenk.
Even sie nicht besayawachten, which meant a gift. Do not open till Christmas. Below it had a carving of what looked like a demonic entity with horns and 2 large feet, not unlike the footprints she had seen on the side of her house. Jolene walked all over her house, looking for any signs of what had come to visit her. Nothing was there, nor was there any sign that there had been. It was as though she were losing her mind. Jolene stood in her kitchen holding the box. As she stood there, her power came back on. She was able to breathe a breath of relief finally. Jolene went on the last 2 weeks leading up to Christmas and noticed that all these strange miracles began to happen for her. Darren even quit bugging her about the box. She was glad because she had forgotten to let him know she had it. Jolene was the type who volunteered every other holiday at the soup kitchen. She had never expected anything to come of it. It was just something she'd always done. Jolene received an award for Outstanding Citizen, gifted by the town of Mulberry Falls. It was sudden and odd for anyone to take notice of her good deeds. It was given to her on Christmas Eve at the local town hall Christmas ceremony, where they had the mayor dress up as Santa and hand out gifts to the less fortunate children in the small town. Jolene went home that Christmas Eve, smiling from ear to ear. She had a small trophy in her hand, which she put on top of her fireplace, next to a photo of her grandmother. Jolene went straight to bed because the next morning she had brunch with family at her father's cabin, so that it would be an early start. On Christmas morning, Jolene got up, made her coffee, and shuffled around her kitchen, trying to find something to eat to get through till she would see her family. That's when she remembered the wooden box. Jolene went over to where she had left it on the bookshelf near the Christmas tree. She pulled the box off the shelf and took it over to her couch and sat down with it on her lap. She unlocked the box with one easy flick of the switch on the front. Jolene slowly opened the box. Inside the box, she found a letter. It was written in all German, but when she looked at it harder, she understood it entirely as if it were written in English. Thank you to the giver of the blood that was sacrificed, as it was in the time of Christ. You will reap the rewards. Enemies will be punished in the way that they most deserve, for you are the one with the heart of Christmas. It made little sense, but Jolene put the letter back in the box and closed it, placing it back on the shelf. She went to take a shower and thought no more of it. That night, she came home and turned on the lights. She put her bag of gifts from her mother and father down next to the door and took off her coat. She walked over to the fireplace and lit it. It was so beautiful, she thought. The lights on the Christmas tree mingling with the fire. Jolene felt the sudden urge for some hot chocolate and wine, a recipe her friend Beau had emailed her last Christmas. Jolene walked into her kitchen and turned on the lights. She grabbed the wine and then turned on the stove to get it ready for the milk and chocolate she needed. She had her head buried in the refrigerator when all of the lights went out. Shit, not again, she said. Jolene closed the door and instead poured herself a glass of wine. As she walked over to her living room, that is when she saw it. Jolene dropped her glass of wine on the wooden floor as she stood in utter terror. In front of her was a creature with 2 horns on top of its head. Its eyes were red and orange like fire. Its teeth were pointed with fangs, and its tongue was long. In one arm, he carried a switch with metal hooks on the end. In the other, he had Darren. He was crying, pleading, but he couldn't speak. His mouth was sewn shut, with tiny, thorny rose vines. His eyes were bleeding as though something had blinded him. Jolene could say nothing. She was rendered dumb in the presence of this massive demon. And finally, the creature spoke.
Engin for the Jolene,
the creature said. Then, to Jolene's horror, the creature took the whip and swung it. The hooks went into Darren's chest, yanking out his heart in one swift pull. Darren collapsed to the ground and the creature let him fall. He walked over to Jolene as tears fell from her face. With one claw, it wiped the tears from her face, handing her Darren's heart.
Keinen kleinen mehr, Krampus is just here.
Outside, Jolene could hear carollers singing "Oh, Holy Night" as she stood watching the creature. He sniffed in her direction, and then he repeated in English, or maybe she now understood the demon.
No more tears. Krampus is here now.
Again, he touched her cheek. Then he walked away, using the whip that he pulled out Darren's heart with, dragging him into a void that seemed to shrink them both in a light. And then they disappeared inside the box. As the box closed on them, she heard,
Till next year, Jolene.